Have you ever noticed how an empath's silence is often mistaken for weakness, as if staying quiet in the face of abuse was nothing more than surrender? But there comes a moment, rare, decisive, transformative, when the empath finally wakes up. And on that day, everything changes. The narcissist, so used to controlling, has no defense against what happens next. Because the empath does not fight back with anger or with words, but with something far more terrifying, the silence that refuses to play the game. That is the moment every mask falls. And I want you to pay attention, because this story might be closer to your own life than you think. Tell me in the comments, have you ever lived the day when silence became your power? Or is that day still waiting for you? For the empath, silence often begins as an act of survival. When the narcissist attacks with words, with manipulation, with carefully chosen cruelty, the empath retreats. They believe that by remaining silent, by absorbing the blows, they are protecting peace. They imagine that silence is love, that patience will heal, that waiting will transform the person they love into something better. But in reality, this silence becomes food. Every moment, the empath holds their tongue. The narcissist grows stronger. Every unspoken protest is interpreted not as grace, but as permission. Carl Jung once said that what we resist not only persists, it grows. The empath resists conflict, resists confrontation, resists the terrifying possibility that the person they love may never change, and so the narcissist's shadow expands, filling the room with entitlement and control. In these early days, the empath convinces themselves that this silence is noble. But quietly, in hidden corners of their own psyche, something darker begins to grow. Resentment, a fatigue so heavy that it feels like carrying stones in the chest. And an inner whisper, this is not love, this is slow death. The narcissist, of course, cannot hear this whisper. To them, the silence is victory. It is proof of power, proof that the empath will bend and bend again without ever breaking. But this is an illusion, a fragile kingdom built on stolen energy. Because silence is not endless, even patience has a final breath. And when that moment arrives, the story will shift forever. Remember this, the silence that feeds the narcissist is the same silence that one day will destroy them. Forgiveness is a sacred act. It has the power to heal, to release, to free both the forgiver and the forgiven. But when forgiveness becomes endless, when it is offered without change, it mutates into something far more dangerous. A weapon used against the very soul that grants it. For the empath, forgiveness is instinctive. They believe in second chances, in redemption, in the hidden goodness within every human being. They see not only the cruelty of the narcissist, but also the wounded child buried underneath, screaming for love. And so, again and again, the empath chooses to forgive. But here lies the hidden tragedy. Forgiveness without boundaries is not healing, it is enabling. Each act of pardon tells the narcissist, you may harm me, and I will return tomorrow with open hands. Each erased wound becomes a green light for the cycle to repeat. Carl Jung warned that the parts of ourselves we refuse to confront will eventually control us. The empath refuses to confront their anger, their disappointment, their deep rage at being used. They bury it beneath layers of compassion. They label it weakness, when in truth it is simply the voice of their shadow, and so the cycle deepens. The narcissist pushes further, testing the limits, discovering that there are none. They realize the empath will bend until bending becomes breaking, but the empath does not break. Not yet. Instead, they pay the price in silence. Anxiety that gnaws at the mind, sleepless nights, a body that carries invisible scars. This is the hidden cost of endless forgiveness, the slow erosion of identity. the empath begins to forget who they are. Outside of the role of caretaker, healer, redeemer, they begin to mistake their wounds for love. But forgiveness is not meant to be infinite. At some point, the soul understands a deeper truth, that to forgive endlessly is not love, but self-abandonment. And the day the empath realizes this truth, the cost is no longer theirs to pay, because once forgiveness ends, the narcissist must face the mirror alone. Every story of survival has a breaking point. For the empath, this moment doesn't come with rage or explosions. It arrives quietly, almost invisibly, a shift inside, a final drop in the cup that has been overflowing for years. And once it happens, there is no going back. The empath, who once gave endless second chances, suddenly feels nothing. Not love, not hate, not hope, just clarity. This is the moment Jung described as the integration of the shadow, the part of us that we repress until it demands to be seen. For the empath, the shadow does not scream for vengeance. It simply whispers a word they were too afraid to say. Enough. This rupture is not visible to the narcissist at first. They expect the old cycle to continue. Cruelty, forgiveness, silence, repeat. But something has changed. The empath no longer plays the role. They no longer explain. They no longer justify. The weight of self-sacrifice falls off like an old garment that never truly fit. And in this new silence, there is no submission. It is not the silence of fear. It is the silence of detachment, a silence that no longer feeds the narcissist, but starves them. For the narcissist, this is terrifying. Because their power was never in themselves, it was always borrowed from the empath's reactions, their care, their willingness to stay. Without that energy, the narcissist begins to unravel. The rupture is not a dramatic confrontation. It is the simple refusal to continue dancing to a tune that was never theirs. It is walking away, not out of spite, but out of survival. And in this act, the empath discovers something profound. Their voice was never loud, but it was always powerful. This is the paradox. The empath doesn't need to shout to be heard. They need only to stop participating. And that single choice, that quiet rupture, carries more power than 1,000 arguments. It is here that the story changes. It is here that the masks begin to fall. For the narcissist, control is theater. Every smile, every compliment, every sudden outburst, it is all part of a carefully constructed performance. The empath has always been the audience, applauding, forgiving, believing in the play. But when the empath ruptures, when they step out of the script, something terrifying happens. The mask begins to slip. At first, the narcissist tries harder. They beg, they charm, they manipulate. They shift from anger to tears, from threats to promises, but none of it works. The empath does not respond in the old ways. They do not rush to soothe. They do not bend under guilt. Their silence is no longer submission. It is a wall the narcissist cannot climb. Carl Jung wrote that masks are never real. They are projections of what we want others to see. When those projections lose their target, they collapse. That is exactly what happens now. The narcissist, stripped of their stage, faces something unbearable: themselves. For the first time, the spotlight does not shine on a grand performance. It shines on the emptiness within. They see the fragile ego, the hollowness, the shadow they have always denied. This fall is violent, not in the physical sense, but in the psychic one. The narcissist begins to unravel. Their words lose weight, their manipulations fall flat, their grandiosity shrinks. Because power was never theirs. It was borrowed from the empath's belief, from the empath's willingness to play along. Now, without that participation, the narcissist feels naked, exposed, unmasked. The truth they have always hidden is now undeniable. They are not strong. They are dependent. They were never in control. The empath was. The irony is cruel. The narcissist built their world on domination, but it collapses the moment the empath simply refuses to fuel it. No screams, no revenge, just the quiet withdrawal of energy. This is the moment of revelation. The mask falls, and the narcissist is left staring at a face they can no longer disguise. Not every victory is loud. Sometimes the most powerful wins are invisible, carried in silence and recognized only by the soul that fought for them. For the empath, triumph does not come by destroying the narcissist. It comes by reclaiming themselves. Piece by piece, they take back the energy once surrendered through endless forgiveness and silence. And in that reclamation they remember compassion is not slavery and love is not self-destruction. Jung taught that wholeness is born when we embrace our shadow. For the empath, this means embracing strength, boundaries, and the sacred right to walk away. What once felt like betrayal now feels like liberation. The narcissist, left without an audience, unravels. Their mask has fallen, their stage is empty, and the silence that once fed them has turned into a wall they cannot break. The empath's victory is invisible, yes, but it is final. And it is the kind of power that terrifies those who seek control. So I ask you, have you lived this invisible victory, or are you still waiting for that day? Share your truth below and stay here, because your story, like this journey, is only beginning.